to go over what we were thinking. The main idea was that I felt the area right here in the overnight session was going to be the key tell-all. My first scenario was we would pull back to this 68 level where the point of control was from below us, and kind of form some sort of a low. I was looking to be long in here. I also thought there was a possibility of a breakdown, which didn't materialize. I was hoping in real time I would be able to kind of read that at a delta or somewhere else. But the main thing on the secondary scenario was that we wouldn't pull back this far. We would kind of struggle with this area, poke through it, come back down, and then go. And really, that's what I think we got more than anything else. Let me just take these back, and then I will. Okay. And what we got was a small pullback from where we were going to open. And this is the range right here, this 80 level, where I thought there'd be some indecision. And on the 30-minute bar chart, honestly, it doesn't look like a lot of indecision. But there was a fair amount of chop right in here for about an hour and a half before we got this breakout. And then it was clearly breaking out after some period of time, which I did not catch. To be honest, I was trading it from the short side of this zone back down into this, and then I got kind of called away, and I really didn't trade any of this stuff. Also, we're probably all noticing that the ranges and the volumes are declining a lot. So it's almost like we're going into the holiday season. And I'm pretty sure rollover is coming up here tomorrow. Or, depending on when you do it, by the end of this week, you're going to have to roll. So that's going to also affect all these things. Anyway, so going into today, so technically we had an outside day, moment of strong uptrend, and we produced a prominent point of control at 37.02. And then in the overnight session, for some reason, we gapped up, we put in tops at 14, and we kind of balanced the whole night long in ES. And basically we're opening either out of range or higher in range, but mostly right in here. It's going to be a difficult read again. I don't think this is going to be super clear to anybody. I think what's going to happen here coming up is that any kind of a rally attempt going higher is going to have to be entered from poor location, and there could be some liquidation breaks that look like the market's falling apart, but then get bought up really fast. So my initial view is that this 37.02 area is going to act, maybe 3700 to 37.02 is going to act as some over-under type of line for me. If we start trading below, like if we start to come down into here and start trading and holding below here and kind of working out this, there is a possibility that we could push down into this point of control from these last couple of days, which is right there. And then if we get really aggressive on the downside, which is unlikely, I guess, but still possible, retest that 68s, sort of what we were looking for, what I was looking for potentially yesterday. That seems like a lot of range for this environment, though, to be honest. So probably not all that likely. The secondary thinking possibility is that we don't retrace much, and we kind of hold this gap area and we push up. And if we do, I would expect it to be slow and choppy and building as we go kind of a thing. Maybe I'll be able to see something on that side to kind of get in, but I don't know. I don't really have a battle plan with what's going on right now. So all I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be looking for postmarks and post signs, and signs are, and the biggest one is the point of control from yesterday, followed by the point of control from this little balance up here. if we retrace back in that area. Again, probably looking long first, looking at exhaustion as a possibility for into location like that. That might be good. Like if we get a balance break that just goes straight down into this, you're likely to get a bounce off of there at least first. But I don't think this is a great environment to be spending our political and financial capital right now. So I'm gonna take my foot off the gas until the market regime does what it was doing 2 or 3 weeks ago again.
Hmm. Yeah, very good.
I
So,
don't know if it's very good, but
well, it's
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 all there
good. It's
is.
comforting to me because it's like I feel similarly about what you're describing. So I'll show you my version of all of that. I think the worlds have caught up to each other though. The ES and Dow kind of are in the same place. So one big thing I want to call out is we had an engulfing overnight day last yesterday, and then now we have a bullish engulfing day on the RTH session, which and that created all-time new highs. And I just yesterday I just kept thinking, in man, are they're just trying to suck in every possible buyer. And I'm just got that in the back of my head. So I'm letting off the gas too. The one thing I do want to point out is that yesterday, and I don't really go over my scenarios because reasons. But one thing I pointed out yesterday was that we had tested into this point of control previously here, and that we had made a new high, and that the next expectation is after testing that in the overnight that we would make a new high again. My mouse, the gamer mouse, you are about to go out the window. And then we did. So that's really super interesting. And then now that we're balancing up there, that's acceptance or lack of participation, maybe. But the thing I'm thinking about is, okay, now that that is confirmed, that's happened. We've got that principle of the auction theory at work. What's the next thing that we would expect to see happen? Well, there's a couple. One is a sort of shallow pullback and then suck everybody in for that long there. But on the bigger picture time frame, this high is not going to hold. It's either going to be broken with a new high or it'll be the high. So in the circumstance of being the high, I'm starting to think, well, what would that kind of look like? Well, it would look like coming down here and then balancing, attempting to get higher, and then rolling over, and then we kind of have this head and shoulders pattern sort of thing. And I'm just thinking that through. That's part of the analysis that I've got going into the day. So as I bring my screen back, that's the only thing I want to point out that was coming from yesterday. As I bring my screen back that has my scenarios, a couple things I want to point out is that my expectation is just what Nick said, but with the added caveat that what I think it'll look like is that scenario one is a return to balance, so that sellers take control essentially and bring us down to this level here. And if we reject that area fairly quickly, then we will return back into this balance area here, sort of confirming the bullish notion. And then I would expect either this day or maybe tomorrow or in the overnight that we would see yet another new high. But then, everything's kind of like, let's wait and see. The second scenario that I think is possible is more of a bearish balance idea. So that's this one here, where we're going to weekly attempt to get higher. And this could be like one of those one tick of the overnight high failures. And then we walk back, week attempt back up, balance, 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 and then just drop. And that's where I think we will see this be retested. Um, Now, if we hold there, if we start balancing there, depending on how quickly and what part of the day it happens, then I think we could see a full return to the point of control. That would be a pretty big day, I think, if that all happened. And then the third scenario is like kind of I'm calling it gap and go. I don't know if we're actually going to be gapped. We may. Looks like we may be right now. But we are right now, but we'll see what happens if there's a repo on the open. And that looks like we just, to your point, Nick, about we steadily climb out of this balance area into new highs. And it's, to me, it's really hard, apart from just, and I don't do this, but apart from doing like a measured move, higher. I don't have anything up there, so I don't know what I'm
Yeah,
looking for.
and what I'm thinking about in that scenario also is it's probably pretty much exhausted. Like, are we going to get another leg up from here after the leg up we had yesterday without any kind of balance? So it seems so difficult for me to mentally think of I'm going to get long at 37.10 to pick a number above us in space. It's just I don't know how I'm gonna get along that.
Yeah, and the only thing that we have going for us is, well, not going for us, but like you can see it in the daily where we're just kind of like melting up, you know? It's not really structured moves that really look like what you'd expect it to look like. It's just kind of like compressing into the highs, which is sort of odd. But anyways, that is what it's doing, and so we trade what we see, not what we think. That said, I want to call out a couple of things for my specific battle plan, and here it is. Assuming the picture holds, the picture that we see holds, then first of all, I think that this balance is set up for a price exploration higher right now. So what that would mean is that we would need to see sellers take control, pretty early for the my first scenario to be in play. But what that would look like, and I don't have the drawing, but I'm going to try and approximate it. One second, let me see if I can look at it while I'm doing this. I'm trying to walk and chew gum at the same time, which is never easy, maybe sometimes never even effective. Um, Here you go, blue. Here you go. So what that would look like is that we trash down here, and then there's no bull imbalance at all, which means that I don't see this, like that in the delta. That doesn't happen. So if that doesn't happen, then I've got a lot of conviction that we are going to break this low and test down into this structure here. So it'll look like that. We walk down, and then buyers could surprise us, buy before the overnight low, but I don't expect them to. I'm expecting to see a bull imbalance here, roll over, walk all the way back up into, and that's supposed to be green, but whatever. So there's that. The second plan would be the magenta, where we walk up, we attempt a move up, maybe break it just a little bit, no follow through. We're below the overnight high as jolts comes in, and then that's where you see the structure get broken, balance, 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 breakthrough, breakthrough again, and then the day is basically decided at that point. And I actually think that, and I wrote this here, you can see it. I think if depending on jolts when it happens, it's not really a big deal from a news perspective, but I think depending on the timing of it, it's going to be at 9 o'clock Central Time, I guess. If that's positive and we're above the overnight high, then I expect people to use that to get longer. But if we're not, then I'm expecting it to be used for a repositioning tool. So that's kind of like what's in my mind about that. So what that would mean is that prior to my 10 a.m. that we've got this attempt at the overnight high and we're seeing this bearish imbalance here that pushes back through this area, and then that would be scenario two. And then scenario three is I think going to be the hardest to read, which is you don't we see an impulse reversal here that holds balance, moves up, and then we see a bullish imbalance, escape developing value, and then push up into this area. And jolts will really have no effect on that, I
Yeah,
don't
and
think.
between scenario 2 and scenario 3, when it gets up to that range, you're gonna need that real-time read
Yep.
in delta and anything else you're using to kind of measure order flow at the micro level to determine the direction.
Yeah, and what we saw, you bring up a great point because it affected me yesterday. What we saw yesterday in this move here, no, here, right there. I was supposed to add. I got a signal to add, but there was so much freaking absorption, and you can see it right there. There was so much freaking absorption that the signal was confusing to me. So I'm already seeing absorption here. Buyers are finally starting to make progress, but I'm expecting the same thing. So that's going to make that a pretty difficult read, I think,
Totally.
uh, to take that up. But that's the plan. That's the plan I have for today, and hoping I'm also going to go a little slow today because I just feel off. I can't locate it. I don't know what's going on, but I know from history in the past where if I feel off, I do not like myself when I push on those days. So I'm just gonna like, hey, take it easy. Maybe I won't even trade today.
All right, well, it makes sense to me. I don't think you're gonna miss anything anyway, but
Jeez
I'm
Louise.
just curious. Like, I've never traded a product because before I traded futures, I traded stocks and I didn't really trade all-time high stocks. And when I started trading futures, nothing I was trading was at all-time highs. So I'm trying to come up with some ideas of like, what it's like to actually trade all-time highs when you don't maybe have the higher time frame composites to lean on. Um, the two things I'm kind of like looking at in terms of um, keeping an eye on and maybe working with them a little deeper would be both just the standard pivots and also initial balance extensions. Do you guys have any thoughts on finding interesting levels into all-time highs?
That's what Nick H uses.
Yeah,
Same things. I don't know
yeah.
anything about that stuff, so I mean, you'd be more of an expert on that than me.
Well, I mean, I did it like I've run a couple basic studies on initial balance extensions, and I've found them quite interesting. But I think they can be used, I guess, in a similar way that you might use like a closing sigma, where once we start hitting a certain level, it becomes very unlikely historically to close above that level. And for something like a full extension of an initial balance range, you typically like from my sample size, I mean, we virtually never close above a full initial balance extension from an IB high or IB low.
Hmm.
So I think I'm gonna try to like work with IB extensions, and even without the all-time high factor, I think it's an interesting way to see beyond something like when you take out an initial balance, high or low. I felt like I would sometimes get a little bit, I felt restricted after that. Like, well, what is left for me to do here? But the next one for me would be uh, like an IB extension touch,
Is there a
I think.
way to add in participation in any way? I mean, like,
Definitely.
I would love to see, and I know volume is kind of a static thing. I mean, I guess you could measure it against the previous day if it's increased and just make some hypothesis assumptions about range extension higher, opening higher, like, gap days and certain things like that. But the other thing, like, and I'll share my screen for one more thing, but like, look at this on the daily screen. You can see these candle types, which I think are measurable for what they are, and just see that as participation. Like
Hmm.
if the candle is above 50%, the body's above 50% of the wick, and and we've broken the IB high, then you can expect 40% of the time you're gonna get that
Oh,
full
definitely.
extension.
Oh, combinations like that are definitely, what I like. That's how I've been like to work with stats. Like I'll build out the day, like what's the high of the day, what's the day type. I could look at where we are in relation to VPOC. I could look at delta readings, VWAP. You can add all those things in, and then you can um, look at things like the IB occurrences extension. And I think it's a great way to view the market actually, because I do have my own theories on um, what it might mean, the differences between a very tight IB range versus a very wide IB range. And I think something like an extension to the IB range that we see once it breaks in one direction, I think it's from my looks, initial first looks, it seems like a fantastic way to potentially have a reason to cover.
Hmm.
So it's really interesting for sure. I was just curious if you guys were using them, but I guess not. And it's something I'll continue to explore for sure.
well, just to answer your question on that, I use range, I use average range, I use 10-day average range, and I do those kind of things. I
Yeah.
don't really use the IB extension. But I could tell you that all of those numbers that you're going to use, and I'm sure you're using them this way, are targets for general areas on the long side and not something you're going to be trying to lean against on the short side without something else, like
Yeah.
without something really obvious in the day session. So
Yeah, yeah, you're right. Like I wouldn't. It's not that I would see us approaching like the full IB extension, like to the upside, for example, and I'm gonna try to stand in front of
yeah,
that
and then you
and
try to
say,
get
"Oh
short
no,
or something.
no." I think it's more a reason to cover. I think if you've been long and you're, let's say, pushing into all-time highs, and we hit a full IB extension from the morning's range, to me that's a logic, like that's just a reason to cover potentially if you have other reasons to cover too, but not so much to lean on in terms of an entry, definitely not. I mean, maybe Nick would say, Nick H might argue that pivots might be an area where you might look for some turnaround or fading opportunities or something to the high side, but I'm not sure. It's just it's new territory for me to be in and around all-time highs. So
Right. Right.
it's its own beast. And I think for now I'll stick mostly with IB extensions because I can get an idea of why I'm trading in the first place. But now that we're all-time highs, I think they might help with some exits. We'll see.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good luck today, guys.
Awesome.
Cheers,
See
See
you.
you.
guys.
Bye.